Shabbat Sholom.
How are you?
Hi. You have a birthday coming up. I just want to remind you.
I don't hear very well that we're hearing you, so.
Hard to forget my partner again. Oh, good. Excellent. For your birthday. We have 3 days in a row next week. Oh, yeah. Shabbat and 2 Shavuot. You should have been changing That's it. Yirmiyahu. Where am I gonna be? Yeah, we're almost. Yeah, we got a few minutes. That clock is running a little fast. Hi, Becky. Hi, Jeff. Shabbat Shalom. Hi, Ben. Hi. Yeah, good to see you.
Shabbat Shalom, Ben.
Tuesday, I'm at Aviva. Tuesday.
You're gonna be at two.
Tuesday, Visa Tuesday at 2:30. Well, let's see if this works.
Did your fob work this morning? Your fob to get into the synagogue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why? What happened?
Mine didn't work, and either did Lauren's.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I got in okay.
You're here.
I'm here.
You're
I
in.
did enter because I like my office. Okay. Yours didn't work.
No.
Is the door locked here?
Yeah.
So nobody can get in? You got in? Oh, I guess. Well, I know, but the fob apparently wasn't working. But this should be open. Oh well. Hello. Well, it works, but it dies out real fast, so if it does, I don't know where the replacement batteries are. Oh well. We'll do the best we can. All right. Shabbat Shalom over there. Shiru. Oh, Shidamech L'Radecha I might, should we change it anyway? Yeah, probably. A good idea. Because they go, I don't know.
I have a good script, and I'm just trying to be careful.
Yep. Edward. So good, always. I get more than just that.
Sure do.
How are you?
Good.
I saw your picture on the Aviv. There was an ad for Aviv on TV. You look so good. I'm going to be there on Tuesday.
Oh, good. I spoke to Steve.
Did you?
Had a great talk.
Good.
He and Mitch just came back from Haiti.
I know he's Meshuggah going there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go there.
And he had to do a shiver call, so I only have a few minutes with him.
I'll talk to him this week.
We can work through, coming here. He's hoping he can.
Oh,
come
of course. I have to talk to him about that.
Yeah.
It'll be the second weekend in November.
Super.
Yeah, he'll be the only other one besides me that he knows.
Right. Is Ella doing okay?
She's fine. Thanks for asking. Yeah, everybody's well. Let's get off the phone with her. She's fine. Oh, it's so good to see you. So Steve is okay from Haiti? Oh, he's Meshuggah. He said he's doing some project with the author album. It must be very difficult. I know, he did a trip there. That's Steve, he never stops. We took many trips to Israel together, I'm sure he told you. We went to every jewelry shop and craftsman in Jerusalem. That was our thing. A lot of memories with him, yeah. My buddy. We were called the Bobsey twins, the dynamic duo. We were the Talmud. We were Talmud partners.
Right.
And when both of us weren't prepared, because we had pulpits when we were going to school. So
I remember you were study partners. It was great.
we sure were. Yeah.
Especially a study partner.
I don't know how we did it going through school and they weren't large synagogues, but we had pulpits. We were earning we had to earn a living while we were going to school and schlepping into New York every day. We had about the same commute, about an hour each way.
Yeah.
Boy,
He was in Westchester.
he was in Spring Valley, New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we used to get, it wasn't that far. I used to drive up there to see him. He'd come to us. But every day we schlepped into New York City, 4 days a week, except for a Friday.
You've earned your
But we studied together. We managed to we were good students.
Okay, these are free.
Are we ready to go? I guess, yeah, we're late here. All right, let's begin, everyone. Shabbat Shalom, Boker Tov, page 147. Deborah will lead us.
Shochein ad marom v'kadosh shemo.
Shochein ad marom v'kadosh shemo. V'divrei tzadikim titbarach.
V'chatuv rananu tzadikim baranai. Lai sharim navatihila. B'fi sharim tithalau. Uvdivrei tzadikim titbarach. Uv'yashon chasidim titramam, uv'kerev kedoshim titkadash, uv'makalot v'divot amcha beit Yisrael.
Karina yitbar shimcha malkeinu. Shkeinu v'adosorim lefanecha v'levateinu.
Lehodot, lehalel, leshabeach, lefaer, leromein, lehader, levarech, lealei, ukaleis, al kol divrei, shirot v'tishbachot, David ben Yishai, avdecha meshichecha. Yishtabach Shimcha Liad Malkeinu.
Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol v'Kadosh b'Shamayim v'Aretz. Shiru shvacha lev zimra uzmem shla. Barachov v'dam Allah.
Brachot v'hodaot me'ata v'yad olam. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch Shemo.
El melech gadol b'tishbachot. El ha'odot Adon haniflaot. Habocher b'shirei zimra. Melech El chei ha'olamim. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
Be'amad Adivra kirutei, v'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon,
Uv'yomechon,
uv'chayedecho beit Yisrael.
Bagala
Vizman Kariv,
Imaru Amen. Yesh mei Rabba mevarach, Ilam lo me'al maya.
Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yipa'ar, V'yitramam, V'yitnasei, V'yitadar, V'yitalev, V'yitalau, Shemei Dekudesha
Brichu,
Le'ela Mimcha Berchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Da'amiran Be'ama V'maru Amen. Baruchu et Adonai HaMavorach.
Baruch Adonai mevarach, Ilam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam
Please be
Vahed.
seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam.
Baruch atah
Yotzer or
Adonai
uvorech
Eloheinu melech
uvorech
haolam
et
Yotzer
hakol.
or uvarei choshech Oseh shalom uvarei et hakol
Hakol yoducha, hakol yishabchucha.
V'hakol yishabchucha.
Page 150. Hayel poteach b'chol yom taldot sharei mizrach u'v'kel chanei rakia. Uv'tuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid maseh v'reishit hamelech moram li'amiaz m'shabach. Ogen yishenu miskabadenu.
Efes biltecha go aleinu limot HaMashiach ve'en dome lecha Moshienu litchiat hametim.
Eladon, page 151.
Eladon akol
Hamasim,
hamasim
Baruch
umvorach
Befika
befika
neshama,
neshama
Galo v'tuvo, malei olam da'ad udvuna, sova v'imoto, Amid Gael, Hayot HaKodesh, V'nedar v'chavod, Al HaMerkava, Zechut u'mishor lifnei chiso, Chesed v'rachamim lifnei chavodo, Tovim me'orot shebara Eloheinu Yitzhara b'da'at, B'vina uv'askel koach, Ugvura natan bahem, Liot
moshlim bekerev tevel,
Maleim ziv, Mofikim noga,
Na'ezivam
B'chol ha'olam,
Smechim b'tzeitam, v'sasim b'voam,
Osim b'yem
Ratzon konam,
Pier v'chavod, nodnim lishmo, Torah v'rina, L'zecher malchuto, Kara l'shemesh, Vayizrach ra'a v'hitkin, Surat Havana, Sheva nodnim lo, Kol tzeva marom,
Tiferet ugedula, Serafim v'yofim
Ayot HaKodesh. La 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 la. La 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 Hayom HaShvi'i Tiveret Elam HaMelucha One Kara Liyom HaShabbat Be'esh B'Shabbat Me'ilach Yom HaShvi'i Me'shavim Mizmar Yom HaShabbat
Titbarach Moshienu Ashevech Ma'aseh Yadecha V'yal Me'orei Or She'asita Yafa'aru Chasel
Page 153 Tiparat
Titbarach Tzureinu Malkeinu V'go Aleinu V'rei Kedoshim Titbarach Tzureinu Malkeinu V'go Aleinu V'rei Kedoshim
Yishna Mashim Ramashenu כולם הובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים. וכולם עושים
וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה ובטהרה, בשירה ובזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים, ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל.
את שם האל המלך הגדול. הגיבור ונורא הקדוש הוא, וכולם מקבלים עליהם עול מלכות שמיים זה מזה,
והקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח, בשפה ורע ונימה קדושה, כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך הארץ כבודו.
באופן דבחיית הקודש ברעש גדול מתנסים למסורפים.
ברעש גדול מתנסים ליומת שרפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני
ממקומו.
לאל ברוך נמות איתנו, למלך אל חי וקיים, זמירות יאמרו ותשבחות ישמיעו, כי הוא לבדו פועל גבורות. עושה חדשות במלחמות, זרע צדקות, מצמיח ישועות, בורא רפואות, נורא תהילות, אדון הנפלאות. המחדש בטובו בכל יום תמיד, מעשה בראשית כאמור, לעושי אורים גדולים, כי לעולם חסדו. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו,
יוצר
אמרו אמן. Page 154.
אהבה רבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותורה, חמלת עלינו. אבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו, שבטחו בך, שבטחו בך, אבינו מלכנו, ותלמדנו חוקי חיים, כן תכוננו למדנו, אבינו האב הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו, ותן בליבנו להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד ולמד, לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, והערנו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחל לבבינו לאהבה וליראה שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול, סלע באמת. Adonai, Habocher b'yamo Yisrael, b'yahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'yahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavcha v'nafshecha, u'b'chol me'otecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavecha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibata bam, v'shivtecha, v'veitecha, uvlechtecha v'derech, uvshapecha, uvkumecha, shatam liot ayadecha, v'hayu letotafo beinenecha, uchtavtam al mezazot beitecha, uvisharecha. Shema, page 156. V'hayim shemot yishmo mitzvotai. V'natati mitzartzachem bitoyer al lakosh v'yasavte genechem t'yorotzev v'tzarech v'natati esev. Acharafte lebechem v'sashamayim v'dimatar v'adama lo titeni v'lav v'demeira me'alar t'vashat anoten lachem. Shetem otam liot ayetchem v'ayotod menechem limatom b'tah. Et benechem v'daber ba'am v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'chdera. Uvshapecha v'kumecha utatamutcha v'yishorecha. Limman yubuyimechem v'demnechem al hadama shenavotechem. Latid lahem kimi hashamayim al haaretz. Vayomer Adonai Moshe Lemor. Daber el bnei Yisrael. V'yamarta alehem. V'yasu lahem tzitzit. Al kanfei v'dehem l'dorotam. V'natnu al tzitzit. Hakana b'til techelet. V'haya lachem l'tzitzit. Uditem otom. V'schatem et kol mitzvot Adonai. V'yasitem otam. V'lo taturu acharei levavchem. V'acharei nechem. Asher atem zonim achareihem. Limban tizkaru. V'yasitem et kol mitzvotai. V'yitem kadoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim. Liot lachem le'elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Adonai Elohechem emet.
Yasiv nachon.
Lidor vador hu kayam ushmo hu kayam v'chiso nachon u'malchuto ve'emunato liad kayamet.
Udvarav chayim chayimim nemnech matim la'ad alamei alamim alavotenu v'yimutenu v'yolibadenu v'yotorenu v'yodorelav zari yisrael avadech alarish nevyoch.
Emet sha'atahu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu malkeinu melech avotenu go'aleinu go'el avotenu yotzereinu tzur yeshuatenu podenu umatzilenu me'alam shemecha ein Elohim zulatecha
Ezrat avotenu atomi olam.
me'olam.
Again, Mishiyani v'nevchate v'odchotor v'ador v'lo mishveh mishpatech v'sirtzeh haaretz. Emet atordetem emechem mikrivam. L'techneim l'Mashiach miMitzrayim gatanu l'alheinu mibeit avdi b'tadu. Page 158. Bidim hevar v'chasu ma'yim tzarehim echad me'elolatar.
Ram v'nisa gadol v'nora, mashpil ge'im magbi hashifolim, motzi asirim ofode anavim, v'yozer dalim, v'yonel yamo, v'yet shava Tilo Le'Elyon, Baruch Hu Mavarach, Moshe Miriam Uvnei Yisrael, Lecha Anu Shira, Besimcha Rabba, V'amru Chulam, O mi chamocha, Ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha, Nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osefele, Shira chadasha, Shibhu Geolim, Leshimcha asafat hayam, Yachad kulam hodu ve'imlichu, ve'amaru Adonai imloch, le'alam va'ed.
Please rise.
Yandai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai. Tzur Yisrael, Kuma b'Yezrat Yisrael, Uftei Chenemecha Yehuda v'Yisrael. Go Aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
We begin the Shabbat Shacharit Amidah, page 159, through the Kedusha, and then the remainder of the Amidah in silence through page 166. We begin.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei hakol, V'zocher chasdei avot, U'mevi goel libnei v'neihem, L'ma'an shemo b'yahava, Melech ozer ufoked u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, ufoked Sarah, Atah gibor li'olam Adonai, Mechayei metim atav rav lehoshia, Morid hatal, Mechakel chayim bechesed, Mechayei metim barachamim rabim, Somech noflim v'rofei cholim, Umatir eserim, Umakayim emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umido melach, Melech memit umachayeh, Umatzliach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'hachayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei hametim.
Kadesh Shimcha b'lam Shem Shemak Yishimot B'Shmei Marom Kakatu V'Yad Nevi'ech V'Razeh Elzeh V'Amar.
Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, Kashem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom, Kakatuv ayad nevi'echa v'karazeh zeh v'yamar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Melech haaretz kevodo.
Az v'kol rash gadol adir mashmin kol minasim l'matzerafim l'umatam baruch yomeru.
Az b'kol ra'ash gadol אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, אז בקול רעש גדול, אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנסים לעומת שרפים, מתנסים לעומת שרפים, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקום.
ממקומך מלכנו תופיע.
ממקומך מלכנו
תתגדל
תופיע,
ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים.
ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו, ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרב בימינו לעולם ועת תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, ולנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראנה, תראנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך. על ידי דוד נשיח צדקך,
ימלוך לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה.
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גם לך.
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גם לך. ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש. ושפחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם לעולם ועד. לדור ודור, לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד גם לך.
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור נגיד כל לך. כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה, וקדוש אתה. כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה, גדול וקדוש אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו.
האל הקדוש.
אמן. ישמח משה במתנת חלקו. יום דלך לעשות השבת לדורות הברית עולם. ונותתו לידם הרזה ורסוב וידי סלם כדתם יבא זרתי סלם בחבר אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו וצוותינו צרבינו ותבחס ושבטיך וינוחו ויסורן מקדשי שמך ברוך השם מקדשי שבת מודים אנחנו לה שתנו לבותינו סורי נשינו ותולדנו הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו שים שלום לנו כי רוח טוב שמך ברוך אתה דון נמרי סרחש
Oh, says Shalom,
We moved it for the
Shalom,
wedding.
Bimroma.
That's what-
Yaseh,
Shalom,
Oh, says Shalom,
Shalom bimroma.
Yaseh, Shalom. Yaseh, Shalom. Shalom Aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imaru Amen.
Amen.
Ve'imaru Amen.
Kaddish Shalem.
Yitgrav yikrash me rabba.
Amen.
V'yamad ivra kirute v'yamlich malchute. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. V'galav isman karev v'imaru. Amen.
Amen.
Yesh me rabba mevorach. Le'olam me'omaya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalau shemei dekudesh abrichu. Le'elam imka berchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata damiram v'yama v'imaru. Amen. Titkabau tzalotahon v'utahon d'chol Yisrael. Kodam avohon divishmaya v'imaru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imaru. Amen. Oh, says shalom bimramav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu. V'al kol Yisrael v'imaru.
Amen.
Yaseh shalom. Yaseh shalom.
Shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael.
Yaseh shalom.
Yaseh shalom.
Shalom
aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Amen. Deborah Bortnick, Yasha Koach.
Thank you.
Spirited as always. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We have a newly wed couple in our midst Thursday. Wedding of Katarina and Marco. Mazel tov on that wonderfully fast and beautiful occasion. And we, of course, this has been a very difficult week for us, Americans, the tragedy in Texas. And I'm going to be sharing some thoughts about that as I started last night. Try to pull out of this some sense of optimism. Last night we spoke of the heroine Irina Sendler, who rose above the circumstances of the Warsaw Ghetto and her amazing story. And that's what we have to focus on the good that can come out of this great tragedy. I'm going to share some thoughts about that. Just as an introduction, it's quite amazing that this Torah portion begins with the word im, which we're going to be talking about, if. And the precarious nature of the choices that people make with this gift that God has given to us of free will, of making these choices. And we have the burden of the good choices, of course, but the extreme sadness of the bad choices that are made by people along the way. So we're going to be sharing some thoughts about that as well. So let's continue with the Torah service on page 168.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'yein kamasecha malchutecha malachut kol olamim u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech
Adonai malach, Adonai imloch, li'olam va'ed. Adonai oz li'amo yitein. Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
Tivnei Chamot Yerushalayim. Tivnei Chamot Yerushalayim. Ki v'cha levad batachnu melech el ram v'nisa Adon olamim. Vayehi ben Soah Haaron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, V'yafutzu oivecha, V'yanusu misanecha mipanecha, Ki mitzion Tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion Tetzei Torah, Udavar Adonai miYerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Li'amo Yisrael, B'kedushato.
Our people, our prophets, have been railing against violence since the beginning of our people's history. A melody of the verses from our prophets Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. It shall come to pass at the end of days that the mountain of God's house shall be established as the top of the mountains. It shall be exalted above all the hills, and all the nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of God. God will teach us his ways there, and we will walk in his paths. And God shall judge between the nations. He shall decide for many peoples. And one day they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning forks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. For God will break the bow and the sword, and remove all strife from the land. He will make the people lie down one day in safety. Violence shall no more be heard in your land, neither desolation or destruction within your borders. And all of your children shall be taught of God, and great shall be the shalom, the peace of your children. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all God's holy mountain. For the earth shall be one day full of the knowledge of God, as the waters cover the sea. The work of righteousness shall be peace, and the result of righteousness quietness and confidence forever. And then shall all people sin under their vines and under their fig trees, and none shall ever make us afraid again, for God himself has spoken it.
Be'ana rachet v'lishmei kadisha, kadisha yakira, ana emar tushbechan. Be'ana rachet, be'ana rachet v'lishmei kadisha, kadisha yakira, ana emar tushbechan. Yehera kodama, tiftach libi ba'oraita, v'tashli mishalim delibi, v'liba dechol amak Yisrael, l'tavu chayin v'lishlam. Amen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadelu l'Adonai iti, unromema Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula, v'hagevura, v'hatiferet, v'hanetzach, v'hahod. Kicho b'shamayim uva'aretz, Kicho b'shamayim uva'aretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, v'mitnaseh lechol rosh. Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu, v'hishtachavu, lahadom raglav kadoshu. Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu, v'hishtachavu lahar kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
Purim, it would matter. Hanukkah. Please be seated, everyone. Thanks, so. All right. We are reading from the last chapter of the book of Leviticus, chapter 27. It's called the chapter of Arachin. There's actually a whole tractate in the Talmud on this chapter called Arachin. And it seems to be quite prosaic. It's about the early taxation system of Israel. But of course, our rabbis derived much more wisdom from this what seemingly dry text about the evaluation of people. Their point was that the Torah goes out of its way to value every single people among the nation. And every human being, again, the reminder, all goes back to that first chapter in Genesis, which we're going to discuss at our Tikkun Leil Shavuot. All goes back to that first chapter, the basis of the Torah, that every human being is created, B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. If you notice the third verse, it says that every person will be evaluated based upon B'Shekel HaKodesh, according to the holy shekel. And the rabbis derive from that, and this is very important in our society. What do we value in societies? How do we divide people? Viktor Frankl, the great psychologist who wrote this book, Man's Great Search for Meaning, he said that, throw out race, throw out all other categories. The only two categories in the Torah are good people and bad people. That's why I don't want to hear anything about racial distinctions. They don't exist in the Torah. But there is goodness and there's badness. And they come in all kinds of people, all kinds of ways. So the rabbis reminded us that the value of a human being, of every life, is all based upon the potential for goodness. And that's why this text became very important, obviously, to them. And when we see the needless loss of life, which is not only taking place in Texas, but literally on a daily basis in this country, we see a devaluation of life. And it's completely contrary to the great wisdom and strength, the divinity of the Torah text. So let's read this text in that in mind, and how we evaluate the great pain and suffering that people have had to endure in Texas and elsewhere with the needless loss of life to violence. Let's turn to page, I know I have the page number here somewhere, page 753, the last chapter of the book of Leviticus. Okay. We have a celebration to begin.
V'ya'azor v'yagim v'yoshir l'chol ha'chosim bo v'nomar amen.
Amen.
Hakol habu godel Eloheinu tnu kavod l'Torah. Sarah Shoshana bat Yasel. Michael ben Moshe HaKohen. Baruch Shenatan Torah li'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. V'atem hadvikim b'Adonai Elohechem. Chaim kochem hayom.
Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'adaber Adonai a Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'amata alehem yish ki yaflihi neder v'yarchacha nefashot Adonai v'hayarchacha hazachar ben esrim shana Yad ben shishim shana v'haya achecha hamishim shekel kesef v'shekel hakodesh v'im nekavehiv v'haya achecha shaloshim shekel.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam. Atah Sholom. Baruch atah Adonai noten HaTorah.
Amen. If we'll please cover the Torah, we have a Mishabera. My dear friends, our friends. Mi sheberach avotina Avraham v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rechav Leah, u'yevarech Michael ben Moshe HaKohen, v'Sarah Shoshana bat Yesel, ba'avur shebel hayom lehodot l'shem kodsho, ha'kol ha'chesed shegam alehem, miyom chatunatam, u'miyom simchat liban ad yom hazeh. Kadosh Baruch Hu, yishbarei v'yatzilei mikol tzara v'tzka, u'mikol nega u'machala, v'yishlach b'racha v'atzlach b'chol ma'aseh yedehem, im kol Yisrael achehem, v'nomar, Amen. May our God, who blessed all of our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless Michael and Carol Krasnell, who are here at the Torah to express their gratitude for all the blessings that they have shared in their 58 years together as husband and wife, those years that God has afforded them. May the Kadosh Baruch Hu protect and deliver our dear friends. May they continue to enjoy God's blessings every day that they bring to those who are touched by their goodness in the new song of their many years of love and years to share together, embraced by the love of their family, so that they may always live with us in joy, in gladness, in health, in blessing, in peace, and companionship. And let us all say, Amen. Amen, with a great deal of love.
Ya'amod,
Never forget
Ben
everything
Zion
you've done for
Bible,
me. You know
Ben
that.
Yaakov, Beruth, Halevi.
That's God.
The reading for the Levi Aliyah, found on page 753, verse 5.
Baruch Adonai Amorach.
Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך עולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל עמים ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
אמן. מבין 5 שנים ויד בין 20 שנה והיה ערכך הזכור 20 שקלים ונקבה 10 שקלים מבין קדוש ויד בין 5 ימים והיה ערכך הזכר והיה ערכך השכר 5 שקלים כסף ולקנבה ערכך 3 שקלים כסף מבין 60 שנה במעלה עם זכר והיה ערכך 15 שקל ולקבל 10 שקל 10 שקלים מהו מערכך והעמידותו לפני הכהן והריח אותו הכהן על פי אשר תעשי יד הנודר יערכנו
הכהן.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך עולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי העולם נטע בדרכנו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. יישר כוח. Dr. Sex.
יעמוד.
ישעיהו שמריהו,
ישעיה-
שמריהו בן
שמריהו
אהרון ורחל.
בן אהרון ורחל שלישי.
The reading for the Shlishi Aliyah is found on page 754, verse 9.
ברכות אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני ברוך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני ברוך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. ואם בהמה אשר יקריבו ממנו קורבן לאדוני, כל אשר ממנו לאדוני יהיה קודש, לא יחליפנו ולא ימיר אותו ברע ורע בטוב, ואם המר ימיר בהמה בבהמה והיה הוא ותמרתו יהיה קודש. ואם כל בהמה טמאה שלא יקריבו ממנה קורבן לאדוני, והעמיד את הבהמה לפני הכהן, והעריך הכהן אותה בין טוב ובין רע, כערכך הכהן כן יהיה. ואם גאו יגלנו ויאסף חמישיתו על ערכך, ואיש כי יקדיש את ביתו קודש לאדוני וריחו הכהן, בין טוב ובין רע כאשר יריח אותו הכהן כן יקום. מן המקדיש יגדל את ביתו ויאסף חמישית כסף ערכך עליו והיה לו.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי העולם נטע בדרכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
יישר כוח. גם יישר כוח תהיה.
תעמוד מרל פשע בת משה יהודה וגילה רביעי.
The reading for the Revi'i Aliyah begins on page 755 at the Chamishi marking.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Amen. Ve'im misdei achuzato yakdish ish l'Adonai ve'hayar kacha lefi zaro zara chomer se'orim v'chamishim shekel kasev im mishnat hayovel yakdish sadehu kerkacha yakum v'imachar hayovel yakdish sadehu v'chishav lo kohen et hakesev al pi hashanim hanotarot ad shenat hayovel v'nigra me'erkecha v'im ga'o yigal et hatzadeh amakdish oto v'yasav chamishit kesef erkecha alav v'kam lo v'im lo yigal et hatzadeh v'im achar et hatzadeh le'ish acher lo yigael od v'haya sadeh v'tzeito v'yavel kodesh Adonai kisei hacherem
Kohen Yahuzato.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tzrochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Let's cover the Torah. We have Mishabera. Mishabera of the Ramam Sivakov. Sarif Korochavalea. Hu Yavrech et Mero Pesha Bat Moshe Yehuda V'Gila. Sha'alta l'Torah likvod hamakom likvod ha'Torah likvod ha'Shabbat likvod kilat ha'kodesh hazot likvod yom huledet shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu yivarech ota v'et kol mishpachta v'yishlach bracha v'hatzlacha b'chol maseh yedehem yib'chol Yisrael v'echem v'nomar Amen. May you bless our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Bless Merle Hebrews come to the Torah to honor God, to honor the Torah, to honor our Shabbat, to honor our congregations. She does every week, sitting in our office and bringing only good cheer on behalf of anyone who comes by and who calls. Our dear friend Merle, may you enjoy all the blessings of your birthday.
Thank you.
We're honored to celebrate your birthday with you. Stay forever young, stay healthy, stay good, and know that you affect everyone who meets you with a great deal of love.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Yom Huledet Sameach. Beautiful talit, gorgeous talit. Really beautiful. Huledet Sameach, Yom Huledet Sameach. Very spontaneous. Huledet Sameach. You still want to keep singing? Any other birthday? We do have another birthday. Okay. Let's continue.
Julia and Raphael.
Ben Julia Raphael, Ben
Miriam,
Miriam,
Bat Israel ורבקה.
Bat Israel Rivka,
חמישי.
The reading for the Chamishi Aliyah is found on page 755, the last paragraph at the sheet marking.
Mario.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך. ברוך אתה אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Amen. Ve'im et zedei miknato asher lo misdei achuzato yakdish ladonai v'chishav lo hakohen et mechsat ha'erkecha ad shenat hayovel v'natan et ha'erkecha vayom hahu kodesh ladonai Bishnat Hayovel Yashuv Hasadeh La'asher Kanahu Me'ito La'asher Lo Achuzat Ha'aretz B'chol Erkacha Yeh B'shekel HaKodesh Esrim Geirah
יהיה השקל.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen. And Miriam and Mario Alphon are here in memory of your brother, Rachamim Rami. When did he pass away? He died in the 6-day war. His anniversary we are observing. Yeah, this is the anniversary. Oh boy. How old was he? How old was it? 27 when he passed away in Golan, Sinai? In Jerusalem.
It's half a mile from the Kotel.
I know Gilo, of course, yeah. There was, I know my geography of Yerushalayim. Oh, that's for sure. You know where I am. God bless you. His memories remembered by us all. Yom Yerushalayim. Tomorrow. Wow.
The reading for the 6th Aliyah begins on page 756.
Esther, Bat Shimshon, Visima, Shishi.
Verse 26.
Whose birthday? Oh, it's Esther's birthday. Oh, that I don't have here. Okay. Oh, thank you for telling me.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMvorach.
Baruch Adonai Varach Le'olam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai HaMvorach Le'olam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Ach Bechor Asher Yivuchar L'Adonai Babahima Lo Yakdish Ishoto Im Shor Im Zel L'Adonai Hu Ve'im Babahima Hatmea Ufata Barachacha Ve'asav Chamishato Alav Ve'im Lo Yigael Ve'im Kar Barachacha Ach Kolchei Ram Asher Yacharim Ish L'Adonai Mikol Asher Lo Ve'adam U'vehimal U'mistech U'zato Lo Yimker Ve'lo Yigael Kolchei Ram Kodesh Kodeshim
Hu L'Adonai.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Notah B'tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. We have another celebration by surprise. Here, Misha Berach Avotinu. Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov, Sardik Baruch Havaleinu, Yivorech Esther Bat. Shimshon Vesima She'al Tal Torah. Likvod Hamakom Likvod HaShabbat Likvod HaTorah Likvod Kilat HaKodesh Azov Likvod Yom Huledet Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yivarech Otav V'Kol Mishpachtav Yishlach Bracha V'Hatzacha B'Kol Maseh Yadeha Im Kol Yisur Alecheha V'Nomar Amen. May you bless our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah. Bless dear Esther, who has come to the Torah to honor God, our Shabbat, our Torah, our congregation, and allow us to celebrate her birthday. Young forever. Stay healthy, stay good, stay smiling and friend to so many of us with a great deal of love and affection. We have to sing again. Yom Huledet Sameach, Yom Huledet Sameach, Yom Huledet Sameach. Thank you. Yom Huledet Sameach.
The reading for the Shvi'i Aliyah, page 756 at the Shvi'i marking.
Yom Tu, Aryeh ben Baruch,
No.
We'll do Misha Bera before you.
Okay.
Baila Kraina,
No, not yet.
Batchaya, Ushmuel, Shvi'i.
et Adonai HaMavorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMavorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim, V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Kol cherem asher chara min adam lo yipodem od yumat. V'chol masar haaretz mizer haaretz mipri ha'etz l'Adonai hu kodesh Adonai. V'im gaol yigal ish b'masro chamishita Yosef alav v'chol masav hakabatzon kol asher yavor tachat hashavet asiri yakodesh l'Adonai lo yivaker ben tov l'ra v'lo yimirenu v'im hamer yimirenu v'hayahu tmurato yakodesh lo yigael eile hamitzvot asher
Rise, everyone.
tiva Adonai et Moshe b'nei Yisrael
B'har Sinai. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek.
Chazak, chazak, v'chazek.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Yasher koach, Carol, Larry, Yasher koach. Our Mishabera for those who are ill, Yasher koach, Larry. Yasher koach. Mishaberach Avodein Avram Yaakov, V'imoteinu sarif korach avaleya, U'yivarech v'rapeh et kol hacholim, Tev Gershon ben Aharon, Avi v'Rivka, Tzvi Yitzhak ben Shima v'Chaya, David Yosef ben Chanabasha, Yitzhak bat Shulomit, Rivka Shifra bat Sarah Rezel, Taya bat Moshe v'Julie Rachel, Leila bat Sega, Leah bat Sarah, Mary Barton, Beryl, Tiam Eliezer, Dan Sili, Sarah Bracha bat Baruch v'Tiva, Leah bat Naphtali, Gedalia ben Chaya, Yoah ben Dov, Yerachmiel, Akiva ben Emerich v'Rozi, Levtzi ben Gittel Shifra. Should also include all those who are recovering from wounds in Texas and all who are ill that we remember in our hearts. Mehiraru Fleishamim and Shemaim, Rifuat and Nefesh, Rufat Aguf, Betosh, Archo Chalim, Chazek Yidei, Hoskim, Bitzor, Kekem Shabbati, Mlizal Kurufa, Kurovo Lavo, Hashmavizman Kariv, Finomar, Amen. May God who bless our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah, bring blessing and healing to all of our loved ones we've remembered in our prayers this morning. May the Holy One mercifully restore them to health and vigor. May God grant them spiritual as well as physical well-being, together with all others who are ill. May God grant strength to those who tend to them. This is Shabbat. We have hope. We refrain from crying out. Yet we pray that healing, refuah shlema, is at hand. And let us say, Amen. Mishabera Avoteinu Mikor Beracha Imoteinu. May the source of blessing, the frankest ones before us, help us find the courage to make
מכל הברך
Bless those in need of
healing with refuah shlema, renewal of body, renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Yitgadal v'kadash shemei Rabbah. B'amad divrach yirtei v'amlich malchutei. B'chayecha u'b'yomecha u'v'chayetecha beit Yisrael. B'gala b'gala u'v'zman kari. V'yimeru Amen. Yehi Shnei Rabba Mevarach Li'olam Me'omaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yipar V'yitamam V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yitale V'yitalal Shemed Kodesha Rechu Leila min kol berchata b'shirata toshbechata v'nechemata da'amihiram b'yama b'yimeru. Amen.
Please be seated.
Yamdu Nachem ben David Bachana Maftir.
Chomasa. Bakar.
The reading for the Maftir Aliyah begins on page 756, the last line on the page.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Elam Vahed.
אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
וכל מסע בקר וצאן, כל אשר יעבור תחת השבת העשירי הקודש לאדוני, לא יבקר בין טוב לרע ולא ימירנו, ואם המלך ימירנו והיהו תמורתו יהיה קודש לא יגאל. אלה המצוות אשר ציווה אדוני את משה בני ישראל בהר סיני. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת בחיי עולם, נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Please cover the Torah. We have another very special birthday and honor for this rabbi on behalf of us all. Misha berach avoteinu Avraham v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rachav Leah Yevorechet, Hechazan Nachum ben David, V'chana Shalah Hayom Likvod HaMakom, Likvod Torah, Likvod HaShabbat, Likvod Kilat HaKodesh Hazot, Likvod Yom Huledet Shalo, Ha'luladol Al Kol HaChasadim Asher Gamalo Elohim, Miyom Hivado Hayom Hazeh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yishmor Oto, V'et Kol Mishpachto, V'yishla Baracha V'Hatzacha B'chol Maseh Yadav, Im Kol Yisrael Echa V'Nomar. Amen. May He who bless our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless our dear Chazan, Nahum, the son of David and Chana, Cantor Neil Newman, who has come for an aliyah on this particular shop, Shabbat with reverence for God, respect for the Torah, to honor Shabbat, to honor our congregation, and to mark the gratitude to God for the gift of his life, which he has enjoyed until this day in celebration of his birthday. May the Kadosh Baruch Hu continue to bless Kenner Newman on this his 80th birthday, with at least 80 more, halfway, with length of years, length of years, good health, the pleasures of Torah study, and the profound satisfaction that comes from, and we've all sensed and known, a life of Maasim Tovi, good deeds and righteousness. Celebrating this and other birthdays, we'd all become very much aware, especially the example of Cantor Newman, how precious we must be in counting our days every day here in this life. But a person of wisdom makes every day count, as Cantor Newman. And let us all in celebration say, Amen. Amen. A great deal of love. Sameach. What a pleasure for me. Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. With great deal of love. Mazal Tov. Please rise, everyone. I know we've got it. We have it. Do not worry.
Hamak b'yev hagalelet.
V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael ab yad Adonai b'yad Moshe. V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael ab yad Adonai b'yad Moshe. V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. La 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 Please be seated. We turn to page 764 for the Haftarah of the Chukotai. We're going to be beginning with the 5th verse. There, this is Jeremiah again, Yirmiyahu. It is at the end of the 6th century before the Common Era. The Babylonians are about to destroy Jerusalem. He sees bloodshed everywhere. He sees our people vanquished and exiled ruthlessly into Babylonia without much sense and hope for the future. Now, that was a big-scale tragedy. But certainly as we are focusing on the tragedy in Texas, he throws up his hands and says, Adonai Uzi Uma Uzi. God is my strength and my stronghold. I will never give up that faith. Uminasi biyom sarah. He is my refuge when times of trouble are with us. Elecha gayim yavo. One day he's going to come to the nations and all the scores will be settled, that the evil will be wiped away and the good will endure. So that is the message of the Haftarah, very consistent with the message of the Torah reading. So page 764.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'divrim tovim v'ratza b'divrehem הנאמרים באמת. Baruch atah Adonai הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובישראל עמו ובנביאי האמת והצדק. כה אמר אדוני הגבר אשר יפתח באדם ושם בשר זרוע ומן אדוני אסור ליבו והיה כערער בערבה ולא יראה כי יבוא טוב ושכן חררים במדבר ארץ מלאכה ולא תשב ברוך הגבר אשר יפתח באדוני והיה אדוני מבטחו והיה כי עץ שתול על מים ויעל יובל ישלח שרשיו ולא יראה כי יבוא חום והיה עליהו רענן ובשנת בצורת לא ידאג ולא ימיש מעשות פרי עקוב הלב מכל ואנושו מי ידענו אני אדוני חוקר לב בוחן כליות ולתת לאיש כדרכיו כפרי מעלליו קורא דגר ולא ילד עושה עושר ולא במשפט וחצי ימיו יעזבנו ובאחריתו יהיה נבל כיסא כבוד מרום מראשון נקום מקדשנו מקווה ישראל אדוני כל עוזביך יבושו וסורי בארץ יכתבו כי יעזבו מקור מים חיים את אדוני רפאני אדוני וירפא הושיעני ויבשע כי תהילתי אתה ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם צור כל עולמים צדיק בכל הדורות האל הנאמן אומר יוסף מדבר ומקיים שכל דבריו אמת וצדק נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ונאמנים דבריך ודבר אחד בדבריך אחור לא ישוב ריקם כי המלך נאמן ורחמן אתה ברוך אתה אדוני
ברוך וברוך שמו
ונאמן בכל דבריו
אמן
רחם הציין כי הבאת חיינו ולעלובת נפש תושיע במהרה בימינו ברוך אתה אדוני
ברוך שמו
משמח ציון בבניה
אמן
שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו באליהו הנביא עבדך ובמלכות בית דוד משיחך במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו על כיסא לא ישב זך ולא ינחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו שלא יכבנהו לעולם ועד וברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד על התורה ועל העבודה ועל ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל החי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני
ברוך שמו
מקדש השבת.
Amen. Asher koach. But what is your bar mitzvah portion? It's not coming. Okay, after Shavuot. Very good. Yasher koach, Cantor Newman. Please, let's turn to page 177. Please rise. Our country needs lots of prayers. It doesn't matter where we come from on these issues. We need to pray for them. Also, this is Memorial Day, and we should remember those who've given up their lives for the sake of this country, not to be forgotten. So let's read on page 177. Our God and God of our ancestors, with mercy accept our prayer on behalf of our country and its government. Pour out your blessing upon this land, upon its inhabitants, upon its leaders, judges, officers, and officials who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of the public. Help them understand the rules of justice you have decreed, so that peace and security, happiness and freedom will never depart from our land. Adonai, God whose spirit is in all creatures, we pray that your spirits be awakened within all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot from our hearts hatred and malice, jealousy and strife. Plant love and companionship, peace and friendship among the many peoples and faiths that dwell in our nation. Grant us the knowledge to judge justly, the wisdom to act with compassion, the understanding and courage to root out poverty from our land. May it be your will that our land be a blessing to all who dwell on earth, cause all peoples to dwell in friendship and freedom. Speedily fulfill the vision of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. Neither shall they learn war anymore. Let us say amen. And our prayer for the peace of the state of Israel, we're going to read on page 178. We are marking the 55th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem, which took place, I'll never forget, as a 14-year-old. On my birthday, June 5th, the war broke out, and then there was celebration by the end of the week with something that our ancestors could never envision, that Jerusalem would be a united, free, independent city under the reign of the state of Israel. Let's read for the peace of the state of Israel. Sovereign of the universe, accept in loving kindness and with favor our prayers for the state of Israel, her government, and all who dwell within her boundaries and under her authority. Open our hearts, eyes and our hearts to the wonder of Israel. Strengthen our faith in your power to work redemption in every human soul. Grant us also the fortitude to keep ever before us those ideals upon which the state of Israel was founded. Grant courage, wisdom, and strength to those entrusted with guiding Israel's destiny to do your will. Be with those on whose shoulders Israel's safety depends, and defend them from all harm. Spread over Israel and all the world your shelter of peace. And may the vision of your prophets soon be fulfilled. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. And now we're going to hear the Birkat HaChodesh, the blessing for the new month of Shavuot, the month of Shavuot, page 180.
רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שתחדש עלינו את החודש הבא לטובה ולברכה. ותיתן לנו חיים ארוכים, חיים של שלום, חיים של טובה, חיים של ברכה. חיים של פרנסה, חיים של חילוץ עצמות, חיים שיש בהם יראת שמיים ויראת חטא, חיים שאין בהם בושה וכלימה, חיים של עושר וכבוד, חיים שתהיה בנו אהבת תורה ויראת שמיים, חיים שימלאו משאלות ליבנו לטובה.
Amen. Selah. Misha Sadisi B'lavotenu Limotenu V'galotami Avdut L'cherut Hu Yigalotana B'karov V'gabetz Nidachem Yabak Kanfota Aretz Chaverim Kol Yisrael V'nomar Amen. May God, who wrought miracles for our ancestors, redeeming them from slavery to freedom, redeem us soon and gather our dispersed from the four corners of the earth. May the entire people of Israel be united in friendship, and let us say, Amen.
מי שעשה ניסים לאבותינו וגאל אותם מעבדות לחירות, יגאל אותנו מקרוב יקבץ נידחנו מארבע כנפות הארץ. חברים כל ישראל ונאמר
Amen.
ראש חודש סיוון יהיה ביום השלישי הבא עלינו ועל כל ישראל לטובה.
The new month of Sivan begins on Monday evening. It's a one-day Rosh Chodesh on Tuesday. May this month of Matan Toratenu, the celebration of Shavuot, the receiving of the Torah, bless us, be a blessing for us and for all the people, Israel. Chadsheh.
יחדשהו הקדוש ברוך הוא עלינו ועל כל עמו בית ישראל לחיים ולשלום,
אמן.
לששון ולשמחה,
אמן.
לישועה ולנחמה ונאמר
Amen. Torah's at rest. We may be seated. Ashrei, page 181. Oh, Jerry. Hi. This is a nice surprise.
Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, O Jehallelucha Salah.
Ashrei ha'am shekach lo, Ashrei ha'am sh'Adonai Elohav.
Tehillah LeDavid, Aromi Mecha Elohai HaMelech, V'arach Hashimcha Le'olam Va'ed.
B'chol yom avachecha, ve'al l'shimcha le'olam va'ed.
Gadol Adonai U'Hulal Me'od, V'lig Dulato Ein Cheker.
Dor l'dor shabach ma'asecha, u'gvrotecha yagidu.
Hadar Kevod Hodecha, V'divre Niflotecha Asicha.
Jesus orotecha yom meheru, u'gedulatcha asaprena.
Zecher Rav Tuvcha Yabi, Uvesid Kartecha Yeranenu.
Chanum v'rachum Adonai, erech apayim goldo chased.
Tov Adonai Lakol, V'rachamav Kol Masav.
Yoduch Adonai, kol maasecha, chasidecha, yivachucha.
Kevod Malchutcha Yomeru, Ugvuratecha Yedaberu.
Odi livnei Adam gevurotav, kvod hadar malchuto.
Malchutecha Malchuka Olamim, Umem Shaltecha Bechol Dor Vador.
Somech Adonai lechol hanoflim, zakef lechol hakfufim.
Ene Koyelecha Yisaberu, Ve'atano Tein Lahem Etochlam Be'ito.
Potech et yadecha, umasbia lechol charatzon.
Tzadik Adonai Bechol Derechav, V'chasid Bechol Ma'asav.
Karov Adonai lechol korav, lechol asher yikru ve'emet.
Ritzon Yerayav Yasad, Ve'et Shavatam Yishma Ve'yoshiem.
Shomer Adonai et kol ohavav, v'et kol arishaim yashmid.
Tehillat Adonai Yedaber Pi, V'varech Kol Basar Shem Kotrol Elam Va'ed.
V'anachnu nevarech ya, mi'ata v'yad olam, hallelujah.
Anachnu Nevarech Ya, Me'ata V'yad Olam, Hallelujah.
Please rise, ya hallelujah. Page 183.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, ki nizkar shema levada.
Hadol al eretz v'shamayim, v'yarem kerem liyamo, tila lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael, Amaro. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Mizmor leDavid, Havul Adonai b'ne'elim, Havul Adonai kavod ha'oz,
Havul Adonai kavod shemo, Yishtachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh.
Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hirim, Adonai hamayim rabim.
Kol Adonai bar koach, Kol Adonai behadar, Kol Adonai shover harazim, Vayeshaber Adonai et arzei ha'levanon.
Vayakidem kemo egel lebana b'siriyan, kemo veremim.
Kol Adonai kotzev lavodesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yecholel ayalot.
Vayechesov yarot, uvechalal kulo כבוד.
Adonai lamabul yashav v'yeshev Adonai melech le'olam Adonai oz liyamo yitein Adonai
יברך את עמו בשלום. ולכל יומם.
Shuva Adonai ruvodacha Yisrael Kamanu v'techa v'ruzecha One should be said there was in the heaven whatever you have
כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם תורתי אל תעזבו את חיימי למה חזיקים בה את עמך ויושר דרכיה דרכיה וכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך בנשובה קדש עמנו כקדם.
Well done, and Mazel Tov to Katarina and Marco. Thank you for honoring us. Please be seated, everyone. I still feel we have to do a little bit more honoring to the city of Jerusalem, and I'd like to begin on page 448. Page 448, and sing with you Yerushalayim. This is, if you've ever been up the top looking into the old city from Har Hatzofim, Hebrew University up there, your beautiful daughter, remembered. Let's sing together on page 448 in honor of Jerusalem and its 55th year of reunification. Me'al Pisgat Har Hatzofim Eshtachave Lachapayim Me'al Pisgat Har Hatzofim Shalom Lach Yerushalayim Me'adorot Chalamti Alayich Lizkot Lirot Yor Panayich Yerushalayim Yerushalayim Ha'ir Panayich Livnech Yerushalayim Yerushalayim Mechor Votayich Evneh. Your wounds, we will see them built again. Jerusalem. So, this has been a very difficult week, and the kind of week that really makes it difficult for rabbis to figure out how to bring a message of dealing with reality, but at the same time leaving with a message, I hope, of great hope and vision for the future. I mentioned last night the great tale of Eilina Sendler, who rose in the circumstances that were perhaps the most horrific in the history of humankind next to the Warsaw Ghetto, and saved thousands of people from the horror of the evil of the Warsaw Ghetto in Nazi Germany. By the way, our trip to Poland next year, God willing, there won't be a war in that region, is scheduled from March 15th to the 23rd or 24th. We haven't quite figured out that last date. Dr. Anthony Polanski will be joining with me on that very special trip that will begin in Vilnius, and end in Krakow. And of course, Auschwitz is next there. So, Uvalde, Texas, never heard of that place until this week. This small town seems like a nice place with good people, and the great horror that we all witnessed there. Two things in the Torah portion stood out immediately after what happened is though we just read Arachin about the value of human life, and also the first word of the portion, if. You can't hear? Okay, let me push this up a little bit. Does that help? All right, I can't tell here in this fishbowl where. I don't think this will help any. I'll move up a little. And also the very first word of the portion, im, which is, again, we struggle with what the Torah says, is that the matters of humanity are really dependent upon the choices that we make. Nothing stops that. From the theological point of view, the existence of human-made evil is of much less theological difficulty than natural suffering. Let me explain the difference. In the Torah, it says very clearly that Cain kills Abel and God does not stop the brothers from killing each other. So embedded in the Torah is, listen, humanity, you have choices to make. Im bechukotai telechu. You can walk in God's ways or you can spurn God's ways. Freedom of choice is at the heart of our theology, that we have to do, that we have to love God. We have to love the good, and humanity has choices before it. Natural suffering is much more difficult. Why innocent people suffer from natural causes, from disease, from all those things. Of course, our spur there is that we have an obligation to heal pain and to prevent suffering in the future. Man-made suffering, we know it's still a huge issue. Why the innocent need to suffer? Why the choices of humanity to build death camps, concentration camps, rather than hospitals is beyond our comprehension and should always be. I'm going to throw out a few things here that have been on my mind. I'm not a politician. I'm a rabbi. So I'm trying to look at this from perhaps this perspective that is much larger than the kinds of arguments that we see on TV. Clearly, if I had my choice, I've said this to many people, if I had my choice, I would confiscate every single gun in this country. I would knock at the door and say, sorry, your time is up. Give me your weapons. I'm guided by the prophet Isaiah, who said that it is the goal that we should be removing our weapons and turning them into pruning forks for constructive purposes. We need to prevent the inability of our society to control these massive weapons that are entering into the hands of people who should be checked much more diligently. I do realize, I'm not that foolish, that to take 400 million guns, which are in this country, is virtually impossible to even comprehend. So I know that my ideal is not going to happen. I would never be elected to political office by espousing that. But at least to prevent rifles from running in the hands of 18-year-old kids who just turned adults, it's beyond comprehension. We'll get to other issues. The availability of these guns to 18-year-olds is quite incredible. And yet all legal, everything happened legally. Their juvenile records are not counted, so this 18-year-old was able to start fresh and buy whatever weapons that he wanted to. Now this is a very personally, I don't think I've ever shared this with many people, but my life was affected by a gunshot. When I was 12 years old, and I was playing a game with my dearest friend Robert, who hopefully will be here soon. We're still dearest friends. And I had to hear on the radio that a Beverly Hills lawyer was shot in his office. It was my father. While we were playing a game on the floor of my home, my mother was home. And that was the first time I heard of it. Of course, they didn't mention any names at the time, but it was right outside my father's office. My father was shot. He took a case that he really didn't want because his neighbor, we were a neighbor, we were the only Jewish family that lived next to two Gentile neighbors, the Simpsons and the Alexanders before the Simpsons became popular. And these neighbors begged my father to take this case for their friend. So he did, because my father was a good guy. And they were in his law office, and there was a deposition that was taking place, and the wife was speaking about her husband, how terrible he was. And the husband, it was a divorce case, it was fuming and terrible. And they took a break from the deposition, and the husband went to the local sporting goods store, Smith's Sporting Goods. I used to buy my baseball gloves there. And they had a big gun display, so he went there, bought his revolver, whatever he bought. I wouldn't know I don't know anything about guns, thank God. He bought the gun, came back to the office, said, "She's a liar," stood up, and he shot his wife she was shot in the hip. My father, the guy he was, jumped out of his seat right away to get the gun from him. He turned around to my father, shot my father in the stomach. So my father was sick for 2 years. He had infections beyond, he was in and out of hospitals. It is a miracle that he lived. He was 46 years old at the time. Starker, good health. Otherwise, he would have succumbed to the wounds. He lost his pancreas. He lost his kidney. His was like this close from the main aorta to his heart. So my dear mother and my 2 brothers, we were in hell for 2 years. My father was in and out of hospitals. Thank God he had a good law partner who was really helped our family during those 2 years to survive. He had infections, his back, as he was on his back for 2 years. So that was a gunshot because someone was angry, went to a sporting goods store. And of course, in those days, there was no cooling off period or waiting period at all. It was just total insanity. So when it comes to this, you have to excuse me a little bit. I just can't believe how lives can be ruined with these weapons of violence. So I'm hard-nosed on taking guns away. Can't help it. I'm also guided by Jewish law. You know that Jewish law prohibits hunting for sport. It's against the law. Do not take your hunting trips. We don't do those. I'll never forget, I took a Shabbat weekend when I was in Chicago to a beautiful Jewish camp up in Wisconsin. Forgot the name of it. And what I didn't know was the beginning of the hunting season up there. So we were sitting, studying, we had our servant, and we hear these guns going off in the woods. It was just like the weird scenario of 2 different cultures here in the same basic area. So I'll never forget that either. Because it is the halakha that we are forbidden as Jews to sell weapons to non-Jews. Many people don't know that. It's in the Mishnah Torah, it's in the Shulchan Aruch, and it's also mentioned in the Talmud Avodah Zarah 15b. It is forbidden to sell non-Jews weapons of war, any other object, the law says, that endangers the public. We're only allowed to sell them shields. Of course, they didn't have other weapons. Shields for self-defense. That's Jewish law. And the reason for that is that the rabbis knew at a very early period that this was kind of a different culture than Jewish culture. And we were not allowed to feed it, to be a part of it. It was prohibited to do so. The guns in the hands of a non-Jew causes that person to transgress. It's rabbinic law. It dates back to the Talmudic period, so at least 1800 years old. And anyone who does that is responsible for what happens. So we are responsible to protect the intellectually and morally blind in our society. That's the way I read that law. It's prohibited. In other words, the indiscriminate sale of weapons that endangers the public is a stumbling block, as the rabbis say, stumbling block to peace and public safety. Very strong, strong words. There are 400 million firearms in America. I mean, I can't even believe it. In the hands of 38% of the population. And it's across the board. It's poor people, minority people, wealthy people, you name it. Every sector of American society has weapons. And of course, they are fully in the hands of criminals who want to do harm. So I know confiscation is not possible, but there are other things. And there are other things which I think are good arguments, which I've been railing at for a long time since I've been rabbi. It's not just about the guns, it's about the whole violence in our society, the video games, the movies on TV, the violence on television that our kids especially are watching every day. I can't take it. Everybody's blowing up as if we don't count that anymore. And it is a serious issue. The alienation of our young people especially, who connect with each other only by a telephone now. The lack of human contact is a very serious issue. And as they play their games and text to each other, they don't know each other, never connect. And there's so much loneliness. This 18-year-old, I refuse to mention his name. I don't know his circumstances. But no father. Mother is a drug addict. The grandfather that he was living with is a felon, former felon. The grandmother, we don't know much about her. He shot her in the head before he went and killed those young children. And we know that most of the crimes that are being done in our society are because families are in complete disarray. There are no fathers at home anymore. 80% of all the children born in black families now, African American families, are illegitimate. 80%. What are the consequences of that? The Torah makes it very clear. And you have the breakdown of the family, you have the breakdown of society. There's so many layers that have to be dealt with. There should be an emergency session with all kinds of issues, because I think the American people want to finally come to grips with so many things there are murders taking place every day in our inner cities. We just don't even pay attention to it anymore. There's been 257 youths killed just in the city of Chicago since the beginning of the year. And when does it end? When do we get a hold of the society that we're living in? In other words, my theory of all this is that, yes, we need gun control for sure, but it's not enough. And we have to be smart enough to know it's not enough. We need a lot more in our society, because there is a moral issue of the pillars of society that are literally falling apart, which, by the way, with all the problems in Israel and all the weapons in Israel, they do have murders there, but you can almost count them on your fingers. The society is very different in Israel, and they're having families. Not all families are perfect there, of course, but they have much greater hope because of the strong vitality of their social structure. No matter who's in power there, the families in Israel are strong. I mentioned all these things. There's a breakdown of respect for law enforcement. There's a mental health disaster in this country. Homelessness has given rise to a 12% uptick in crime from that group. And drugs and alcohol. 100,000 people died from fentanyl over this year. Crime is way up in virtually every city in this country. The breakdown of order in society is all part of the same picture here. And believe me, we should all have a certain amount of being scared and realize that we live in this beautiful bubble here, so far from the problems of society. The breakdown of communities, the breakdown of religion, whether we're Christian, Jewish, or whatever, the breakdown of communities is having an enormous consequence on the disarray and the alienation of youth. That's why the founding fathers and mothers of this country said that the pillars of the United States will be the family and our freedom and our communities, our congregations. Otherwise, we will not make it. There's a lack of respect for sancta of our society, a breakdown of our national values. So there's a lot of, those are some of the things that I have mentioned. Homicides are up 26% just in the last 2 years. And we certainly need security. I think that if there's a consensus in this country, is that we need both massive gun control and a great deal of security. And Jill Service is not here, but we're very fortunate that we've kept our own security at the top of our list here. And I saw one headline that said that perhaps our country will turn to Israel for security issues. Every school in Israel has enormous security. There have been 6 violent acts in Israel against school children since 1974, which is nothing. I believe there are probably 6 in the last 2 weeks in this country. So every student who goes to school in Israel, first of all, the walls are high, you can't go over, has to pass through 2 barriers, an inspection. Everybody who comes out, every student has to sign in. There's an armed guard at the door when students come. In the larger schools, there's a motorcycle policeman who circles the boundaries of the school all day while the kids are in a session there. And, which is something for us to think about, they also have a massive amount of parental volunteer security on the premises as well, which is probably something we should be doing here, to have as many eyes possible. There are cameras all over the place there. I read the report from this Mr. Cohen, who was in charge of security. And there's a manual activation that takes place when any problem arises that goes straight to the head of security at every school in Israel. That's what we need to do here. It has to be done, and it has to be done as soon as possible. So I want to, I mentioned Arachim, I mentioned that we should never forget that with all the evil in society, there are a lot of good people who make a difference, who rise above their circumstances, like Arina Sendler. And we should compliment the caregivers, the law enforcement officers, although there's such controversy with that right now, the parents, the civic officials, the outpouring of bereavement all over the nation. I've been trying to get a link to see if we can raise some funds for those families that have lost their children. If you have any connections, please, I'd like us to make that known to the rest of the congregation. But I want to finish with this. The Torah portion begins with the word im, which is translated as if, which is, to me, so incredibly important here to again realize that every act, every word that we utter has consequences if it's all in our hands and all in our choices. But the rabbis understood that from the im also comes good. And if you take the aleph and the mem, which is the spelling of the word im, you have the first 2 letters of Aharon, Moshe, and Miriam. So our rabbis taught, because of their intervention, their heroism, and their courage, the if turned into the redemption of our people. And if you take the aleph and the mem, aleph of Esther and the mem of Mordechai, you can see how people can rise up and make the difference in this life, 2 against many. And then the rabbis taught us that if you take the aleph for Eliyahu and the mem of Mashiach, Eliyahu comes before the Mashiach, there will be hope in the future. We just have to make sure that humanity starts walking im telechu, in the paths of God. And so therefore, we have much, much to do. It's too long to finish, but if you ever have a chance, read Rudyard Kipling's poem called If, about the choices that we make. It's addressed to his son, about keeping virtue, about not worrying about what the crowd thinks, about making sure that you do the right thing and make a difference in this world. And the whole purpose of that beautiful poem, which is probably his greatest, is about the precarious nature of life and the choices that we have and we continue to make every single day. The point is, if telechu, it's all in the future tense, what has been has been. Let us hope and pray that we can walk forward into the future. walk forward and start making the right decisions here. And if we make the right decisions, there will be a Jewish people forever. And if we make the right decisions, there will be a United States that we will learn to cherish and love and free and safe once again. If. And I'll finish with this beautiful idea. The middle two letters of the word life are if. Life depends on the choices that we make. But the one additive is the middle two letters of the Hebrew word for life is Chaim, which is Yud, Yud. It has to be fueled by a faith in tomorrow, a faith in God, a faith in goodness. We cannot afford to lose our dreams and visions that we can make this world a much better place than it is today. Life and Chaim all centers around the if. And let our dear congregation never doubt the importance of our being a shining light for those who want to see what good choices and the difference that good choices make in our life. A difference for Shalom and Chaim. God bless all those children and families that suffer today. They're in our prayers, and we have to do everything we can to make this place, make sure that this never occurs again. Obey. Very hard for me. Please rise, everyone, as we turn to page 184. Chatzi Kaddish before the Musaf Midah. We'll have Chatzi Kaddish. We'll begin the Musaf Midah for Shabbat through the Kedusha and then the remainder of the Musaf Amidah silently through page 192. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Got it? Enough room?
Yitkada Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yalma divrachim teviyam lich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayrecho beit Yisrael. V'agalav yizman kari v'yimnu. Amen.
Amen. Yeshei Rabbah mevarach. Yalma me'omaya. Yitparach. V'ishtabach. Bitpar b'yitravon b'yitnasei. B'yitadal b'yitalel b'yitalal. Shemei dekucha. Brichu.
Yela min kol birchata b'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran v'yama v'yimru. Amen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor V'Hanora Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol Chastei Avot V'Mevi Goel V'Nevnehem V'Man Shemo V'Yahava Melech Chozer Foked U'Moshiach Magin Baruch Atah Adonai Magin Avraham Ufoked Sarah Atah Gibor Elam Adonai L'chaim eitim Torah Me'oshia Norid Atah Mechakel Chaim B'chesed L'chaim eitim B'rachamim Rabim Samech Noflim Rafech Olim U'mati Asurim U'mekayim Emunato V'shem E'afar והחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, לחיי המתים.
אמן. הריסה ונקדישך, תסוסי אספי קודש המקדישים, שמך בקודש ככתוב ביד אביך, ולזרז ויאמר.
נריצך
ונקדישך, כסוסיח ספי קודש המקדישים, שמך בקודש ככתוב על יד נביאך, וכרזה זה ביאמר. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, ולכל הארץ כבודו. כבודו מלא עולם משתיו, שואלים זה לזה יהיה מקום כבודו, מצא ברוך ימי אלוהים.
כבודו מלא עולם משרתיו, שואלים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו, לעומתם, ברוך ימינו.
ברוך ממקומו יפן ברחמים נחם לשמו ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד. פעמיים באהבה.
יפן ממקומו יפן ברחמים. יחד עם שמו, ערב ובוקר, בכל יום תמיד, פעמיים באהבה שמה אומרים. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואלוהינו אבינו מלכנו משיענו והשמינו ורחם ושנינו כוחי להיות לכם לאלוהים. אלוהינו אבינו מלכנו משיענו והשמיענו ברחם השני לעיני כל חי, להיות לכם לאלוהים.
אני אדוני אלוהים.
ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור.
ימלוך נא לעולם אלוהי ציון, טוב הדור, הללויה.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון, טוב הדור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש בשבחך. אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, בשבחך. אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך. וצחים קדושתך נקדיש כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה
שבת רצית קורבנותיה. יד מוסף יום השבת עשה. יום השבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת. אנתחילנו נלוהם ביעבר ורצון שבת קודשך ויונחו ויסוד אנשי שמך ברוך אתה אדוני קדש השבת. מודים אנחנו נודה לך נספר תהילתך ועל כולם אין וחסר רחמים תורת חיים ואף חסד All right, Kaddish Shalem, page 203.
יתקרא ויקרא שמי רבה ילמד יברך ויותר ביום נחמכות וחייכון וימיך ונוחייתך בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן
אמן ישמי רבה מברך יעלם עלמי המיה יפרח
וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתעשה ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה ויעלה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה אדם ירם ימה ויאמרו אמן
אמן
תקבל צלותינו וברכותינו לכל ישראל קודם אבון ומשמעיה ויאמרו אמן יהי שלמה רבה משמעיה וחיים עלינו יחול ישראל ויאמרו אמן
אמן
עושה שלום ממרומם ויעשה שלום עלינו יחול ישראל ויאמרו אמן
In Kelohenu, page 204.
En Kelohenu, en Kadonenu, en Kemalkenu, en Kemoshienu, Michaelenu, Michadonenu,
Kemalkenu,
Michemoshienu,
Elohenu, Nodelado,
Donenu, Nodelem, Malkenu, Nodelem, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch
Adonenu,
Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch אתה הוא מושיענו, אתה הוא שהתירו אבותינו לפניך את קטורת הסמים, אין כאלוהינו, אין כאדוננו, אין כמלכנו, אין כמושיענו.
We rise for Aleinu, page 205.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית,
שלא עשנו כגויי הרצון,
ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורל עלינו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ,
ומושב יקרו בשמיים עמם, ושכינת זו
בגופי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו, ומפחנו את בסולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, ידעת היום, והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, הארץ מתחת ונאמר היה אדוני ומלך הארץ,
היום ההוא
ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
Please be seated, everyone. Let's remember our loved ones. At this end of the service, we remember them with love. My grandmother, Lena Altschuler, Annabelle Nadel, Abraham Jacob Shapiro, Helen Klein, Marvin Bieberman, Rabbi Mordechai Simon, Tekla Block, Lester Safir, Hannah Aratsky, Jesse Engel, Fea Manuel, Nathan Berlin, Rose Friedman, Daniel Hamburg, May M. Rubin, Joyce West, Harry Belenkoff, Ray Kalin, Isidore Katz, Mary Goldstein, Elliot Zafran, Samuel Nerens, Alan Goldstone, Margaret Schindler, Norman Siegel, Fira K. Circus, Moses Cohen, Simcha Ben Shlomo Simon, Sophia Barr, Julius Wahlberg, Zichronam Livrachal, blessed memory. Those in mourning, those remembering yard sites, here and at home, please rise for our Kaddish. Remember them with love. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yamechon, v'chayet echol beit Yisrael. Agalav v'yisman kariv v'imru, amen. Shmei rabbah mevarach, lam maya. Yipara v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei kudusha, brichu, Elam min kol bichata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, tamiran bi'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shmaya, chayim aleinu, bi'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu, bi'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. God bless them. We remember them with love. Lauren is here for the announcements.
Good morning, Shabbat Sholom, everyone. It's so nice to see a full house in this beautiful chapel. Thank you, Deborah Bortnick. Where's Deborah? Oh, Deborah. Thank you for leading us in morning services, and to Neil, thank you for leading us in the. Where's Neil? I don't even. Oh, right in front of my face. Okay, thank you. Rabbi Adria Kaufeld, Lennon Van Berman, always thank you. Today's Bima baskets are sponsored by Judy and Jack Block in honor of the special occasion of Serenay and Neil Newman. Merle Harbor in honor of her birthday. Happy birthday. Miriam and Marion Halpern in memory of Mario's brother. Am I pronouncing it right? Rami. Susan and Marshall Horwitz in honor of their 40th anniversary. Carol and Michael Krasnow in honor of their 58th anniversary. And Ann and Al Trydell in honor of their 50th anniversary. Wow. Debbie and Dick Marshall celebrating the birth of their granddaughter, celebrating their granddaughter Sarah Marshall on her graduation summa cum laude from Binghamton University and her induction into Phi Beta Kappa. Kiddush today is sponsored by Serenay Newman and the children of Neil and Serenay in honor of Neil's 80th birthday. The reason we are in here today is because we are still working on the wall in the sanctuary and social hall, so just be cautioned when we go in there. I don't think it's going to be that much longer.
June 20th.
June 20th, we're so excited. Okay, great. Next weekend is Shavuot. Join us Saturday, June 4th from 7:30 to midnight for service and study session. And there will be a Shavuot service Sunday, June 5th at 9:30 in here in the chapel and on live stream. And there will be a Shavuot and Yitzchak service on Monday, June 6th, 9:30 a.m. live stream in chapel. We also want to remind everyone on Sunday, June 12th, is the musical salute to Molly Picone, the star of the Yiddish Theater. It will be here in the chapel. Doors open at 2:45 with a cheese and wine reception. The concert will start at 4 o'clock. Vocalist Diane Sipkin and our very own Toby Simon will be performing, so please sign up. I think we've gotten a fair amount of people so far, so we look forward to having a packed house that day. You can do it online. And I think tickets are $10 online. I just want to say one thing before I leave you all. Neil, I want to wish you a very happy birthday. When Todd and I arrived in Sarasota, we had the good fortune of meeting you and Serenay, and we became instant friends. When I look at you, I do not see an 80-year-old. I see the gleam in your eyes and the look of pure joy on your face when you're up here davening. You become more precious than all the gold in the world to everyone who knows and loves you. May your 80th birthday be as unforgettable as you are.
Oh, that's very nice.
Thank you.
Lauren, you should be making Hallmark cards. That's really fabulous. Go ahead, do it. That was really beautiful. All right, I think we're ready to conclude our service with Adon Olam. See, we put you right to work, Neil. Adon Olam can be found on page 211.
Adon Olam Hashem Allah B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra Yednasa V'chetzor kol Azar Melech Shemo
Nikra
Azar Melech
Shemo Nikra V'yacharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Imlo
והוא יהיה בתפארה, והוא אחד ואין שני, להמשיל לו להכבירה, בלי ראשית בלי תכלית, ולא העוז והמשרה, ולא העוז והמשרה, והוא עיני וחי גואלי, וצורכב לי ביצרה, והוא ניסי ומנוס לי, מנת כוסי ביום אקרא, מנת כוסי ביום אקרא, בידו אף קידוחי בעת אישן, ויעירה באמרוכי כביעתי, אדוני לי ולא אירא, אדוני לי ולא אירא.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, על כן בירא אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו. סברי ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. ברשותכם, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המוציא לחם מן הארץ. We can eat now. Shabbat Sholom, everyone. I should call. Wow. This is the kind of week she just... The violence in this country. Don't you, I mean, people feel this way. This country's fine. You can't have these